Question often asked how energy coming to our body and how we going to store it or use it. So every time we eat or drink something that contains energy, it usually contains combination of carbohydrates, fats, and protein. Carbohydrates, fat, and protein, as well as alcohol, contains energy because our body can use those components and turns into energy storage or energy that can be used, such as ATP. When we eat, the carbohydrates, the fats, and the protein is going to be digested into several substrates. For carbohydrates, especially complex carbohydrates such as starch, it's going to be break down into smaller glucose or smaller carbs such as glucose, fructose, or galactose. This also happening to fats. When we trying to digest fats, the fats in the foods comes from a lot of different types. It could be triglyceride, it could be cholesterol, it could be some other type of fats that need to be breaking down into fatty acid, and then the fatty acid will be ingested and transported in our body. This also works with protein. Protein, when we digest the protein will turn into amino acids, and those fatty acid, amino acid, or glucose will be distributed in our body. Majority of glucose then going to be used as a source of energy. Interestingly, some glucose will be turned into glycogens, in which our body stores some of glycogens so that when we don't eat or we don't get certain amount of glucose or carbohydrates, we can use those glycogens to be used as a fuel. But when we store our fat is the biggest storage of energy in our body. Fats usually located in adipose tissue. It could be under our skin or around vital organs or around our belly, then being used as a source of energy when needed. When is that? When we don't eat. It's called fasting durations. Fasting is the terminology or the time being when we don't eat and there is a lack of energy coming into our bloodstream from foods. When we are entering the fasting period, for instance, when we sleep, we don't eat when we sleep, right? And when we sleep, our body going to use energy that is being stored in the form of fat. A fat will be broken down, and then from triglyceride, which is the macromolecule or the complex form of fat, breaking down into fatty acids, and the fatty acid will be distributed throughout our body. The same also happens with glucose. The storage of glucose is glycogens. The glycogens is usually stored in muscle cells or in our liver. The glycogen from our liver is going to be breaking down when we are fasting, and then the liver will release glucose. It usually goes to brain, which needs glucose the most. Why? Because our brain cannot really metabolize fatty acid to get an energy. It can metabolize glucose or ketone. Where we get ketone? Ketone is usually formed in hepatocyte or liver cells, and then the ketone is actually made from fatty acids. The fatty acid turns into ketone, and then the ketone will goes to the brain, and the brain will use as a source of energy. That's why we usually call it ketosis. The condition in which when we are fasting or we don't eat that much, then our body start to break down fats, could be triglyceride into fatty acid, and some fatty acid will breaking down as in the context of beta oxidations, or it's going to become ketone, and then the ketone goes around. And what happened when we are fasting is also we are making another fat, or we are breaking down fat into smaller fats and releasing its energy storage. The process is called beta oxidations. The beta oxidation process happens in some cells in our body. That's how our cells are using fatty acid as a source of energy. Beta oxidation can happen in muscle cells. And what happens with beta oxidation is that we are cutting the carbons from fatty acids. And when we cut the carbon out of fatty acid, we release energy stored within that fatty acids. And then the energy going to be used as an ATP. This is how our body use energy, how our body store energy, and what happens when we don't eat on the context of fasting. Thank you for watching the video until the end. If you are still interested to understand more about energy, appetite regulation in the context of weight loss program, please click the link at description. We have classes at Udemy for free just for you. See you!